Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us. Good morning, Thursday, August 27th. We've got a quick COVID-19 update for you. Today, data from the Financial Times shows that the global coronavirus death toll has slightly but steadily decreased. The 7-day rolling average of daily deaths is down to 5,600 a day, which is about 200 fewer than the previous 2 weeks. That's good. The United States, however, is still seeing about 1,000 deaths a day, which is bad. So we're about 17% of the global daily deaths. Latin America as a whole definitely still carries the largest daily death burden, accounting for about 45% of the global daily deaths. So this is definitely the United States and Latin America is where it's happening. We're having trouble over here getting control of the pandemic. On Sunday, a few days ago, the FDA announced that it had granted emergency approval for the use of convalescent plasma in the treatment of hospitalized COVID-19 patients. This is something we were very hopeful for early in the disease, early when we were first dealing with this. It's been used in about 70,000 patients in the United States, the biggest one in a Mayo Clinic trial. The FDA's EUA will broaden access to the treatments. You don't have to just be in a study to be getting this, or on a case-by-case basis, which was what it was before. The decision comes after a lot of kind of top physicians, including Dr. Fauci, warned that the current data on the use of plasma, including the Mayo Clinic study, which I mentioned, is relatively weak and scarce. Thus far, there really is little to no scientific evidence to support the use of antibody-rich plasma in the treatment of COVID-19, is basically how Dr. Fauci put it. In its announcement, the FDA stated that the data it has so far, based on a dozen published studies, indicated that it is reasonable to believe that the treatment may be effective in lessening the severity or shortening the length of COVID-19 illness in some hospitalized patients, especially patients who receive it early. Unlike a drug or vaccine, the efficacy of plasma treatments in the fight against the pandemic is limited because it can't be manufactured in millions of doses. The supply is really dependent on the availability of blood donations. So, as an analysis of this, what this tells me when I look at these studies is that we can no longer trust the FDA at all. Now, let me tell you why. I mean, I was absolutely appalled when I saw what the FDA director, Stephen Hahn, said specifically. Now, the Mayo Clinic study, it wasn't a randomized control trial. It would be nice if we had that. Oh, wait, we did. It was stopped early because of potential harm. But anyway, this is a much bigger study, so maybe there's something here. But again, it's not a randomized control trial. Not everything has to be based on randomized controlled trials, so that's okay. The real issue is with how this was described. The specific statement made by the FDA commissioner was that out of 100 people given this, 35 would have been saved, which is ridiculous. That's not even close to the truth, and it's not even... you really have to stretch to imagine how he could have made this mistake. It seems grossly misleading and inaccurate. And normally what you'll find is there's the old saying, I think it was Mark Twain, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Like you can use statistics to really kind of trick people. Like you can talk about relative risk when you should be talking about absolute risk reduction. There's other tricks you can use. He didn't even go for one of those. He just made a statement that was completely false. So to try to explain how he made this, when you look at this study, what you'll see is in this non-randomized controlled trial, they looked at patients' 7-day mortality if they were given plasma within 3 days or 4 days and later. And the 7-day mortality for the patients who got the plasma earlier was like 9%, and the ones that got later was like 13%. So that difference in that number, you could say, oh, maybe that's 35% difference. Well, first off, that itself is meaningless. Like the 7-day mortality, I mean, to me, whether someone dies at 7 days, 8 days, 14 days, or 45 days from COVID-19 doesn't matter that much. They die or they don't. So that endpoint is a little strange. And what that makes me worry about too is you can take studies like this and you can look and see, okay, what is the mortality rate at 7 days? What about 8.4 days? What about 13.6 days? What about 17.1 days? And you can pick out a number. Also, just giving it at 3 days versus giving it at 4 days plus, that's a weird marker. That doesn't seem like something you would start studying beforehand. So it seems like there's some ability there to manipulate the data. So even if you thought that was a real number, though, even if that was a randomized controlled trial, you came up with those endpoints beforehand, everybody agreed it's the right endpoint, and you found that difference, that means 4 out of 100 would have been saved. So that's significant. If it's statistically significant, then great, let's approve it. But none of what I just said was actually true or happened. Like, this statement was just so grossly ridiculous that it makes me, I mean, they're on my list now. I mean, if first it was the WHO and the CDC, which, by the way, Mike, did you see the guidance the CDC put out yesterday about testing?
Oh, man. No, I quit reading anything from the CDC a few months ago.
Yes, somebody sent it to me last night, and I was like, yeah, I am not surprised. So they basically said, if you've been exposed, you don't have to worry about getting a test as long as you don't have symptoms. Even though 40% of infections are from asymptomatic people, and about 50% of people are infected by someone who is pre-symptomatic. But don't worry about finding out if you're contagious. Just roll with it. So anyway, convalescent plasma is approved, and we can no longer trust the FDA in any way, shape, or form. So
I'm starting to feel like maybe we're becoming like conspiracy theorists or something. But then you actually look at like the things that we're saying, and it boggles my mind. I mean, we're talking about the FDA not understanding the difference between absolute risk and relative risk, which is, I hope, still taught in the second year of medical school. I mean, this is not exactly this is not brain surgery here, you know.
Mike, I would love it if the fact was that he didn't understand the difference, but anyone can understand that difference. It's a much worse thing in my mind that he does understand and he made this statement. So that's worse than him not understanding, honestly.
Yeah, that's certainly concerning. Certainly concerning. Should we talk about some uplifting news?
Yeah, but to end on that, sorry. I want to be clear. Like, I'm not saying convalescent plasma doesn't work. Like, there was one small study that was stopped early because maybe harm, no benefit. But that was a really small study. This is a really big study. It does look like there's probably some signal there, but we want better evidence. So, would I want to get it if I was going to the hospital? I don't know, maybe. So I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad decision. It just means we can't really trust any decisions the FDA makes now. So that's the difficult part. So I don't want to. I'm not one of the people saying we shouldn't use it at all. I just don't know yet.
Well, I think it's reasonable to say that it's very unlikely that it's improving your mortality by 35%, right? Or sorry, by 300%, which is what the statement from the FDA was.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. It was a very promising treatment. It certainly could be. So I do, I guess, want to kind of moderate my statements a little bit, in that I still think there's promise there. I hope it's there. It's just I just want to make a point about. I don't know what the point I want to make. It's just I wish I wasn't kind of warning people about this, but. And I probably shouldn't have went so in depth, because really I think you can probably just Google this, and probably every news outlet has written about this because of how horrific it is. But if we didn't cover it, then it would have felt strange, because I've been so upset about it the last couple of days.
Well, I'm glad you had the opportunity to get that off your chest, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for letting me vent to everyone.
I got a couple of articles that I want to talk about today. The first one is interesting in that this is something that I feel like has been on, at least one news headline a week for the last 4 months. And it's this concept of reinfection with SARS-CoV-2. And we've had quite a few, and I think we've even talked about a few of these on the podcast, where there have been cases that have been claimed to be reinfection that have turned out to be more likely just a case of someone not completely clearing the virus and testing positive with RT-PCR. This one I hold in a different regard. So this is an article published very recently called COVID-19 Reinfection by a phylogenetically distinct SARS coronavirus 2 strain confirmed by whole genome sequencing. So this is basically a study that looks at one person who was ill with COVID in March and then tested positive again 142 days after the first symptomatic episode. And the reason I think this is important is because the researchers were able to genetically sequence the virus the first time and the second time and found that the second virus was genetically distinct from the first. So basically, epidemiological, clinical, serology, and genomic analysis all confirmed that this person had reinfection instead of a persistent viral shedding event, which is what we've seen in just about every single other one of these cases. So this raises the question, how long does immunity last? And it raises the question, does immunity to one form of the SARS-CoV-2 virus protect you against another form after the virus mutates? And, I think we're at a point now where we have to kind of accept the fact that immunity might not be a forever thing, and that this virus may continue to change, whether it's on a monthly basis or a yearly basis like the flu. And we might not maintain any immunity to it. And if a vaccine does come, it might not work to a new form of the virus.
Yeah, I would say this is a big headline, and it seems very scary. It doesn't really affect my fear level or what I'm going to do or think too much, though, just because we have had a reported 24 million cases now, which means we've probably had more, like well over 200 million cases worldwide. And if we have one report of this reinfection, that's not really a statistically important thing. I mean, 0 to 1 is a big difference. That is important in general. But if this was a phenomenon that was going to be happening quite a bit or often, I think we would have seen a lot more than just this one confirmed case. And maybe we will see a lot more. We just haven't hit that time period yet. But this is worrisome, but it's not as worrisome, I think, as the headlines that I read and the way it's been described.
I don't think it changes anything. I mean, I think obviously we're still going to work on a vaccine. Obviously, we're still going to try to continue to protect ourselves, even if we've had SARS-CoV-2 in the past. Having it once doesn't mean you get to no longer wear a mask and run around sneezing on people and rubbing their faces. I think there's obviously we still have to be smart citizens and take care of one another just like we always would have, and continue to work towards an adequate vaccine. But I think, to your point, Matt, it's early. So, it's hard to know, is this just a single flare being shot up that's a warning sign, or is it just a confounder in the data, or a single data point that has no meaning? And I don't think there's any way to know that at this point. We've got to march forward, assuming that these vaccines are going to have some benefit. Whether it's going to be 100% protection or not, that's clearly unlikely. So speaking of vaccines, there's a new one out that we should talk about. This was just published in Cell on August 21st. And this one's interesting because the researchers at the Washington University School of Medicine basically created a vaccine that is a spike protein that they put inside of an adenovirus. They genetically modified the adenovirus. Adenovirus is the common cold. And they genetically modified the common cold virus so that it couldn't actually infect you, but it presents the spike protein to your immune system, basically. And what's interesting about this one is I think this is the first one I've seen that's actually a nasal vaccine. Now, we do have some other nasal vaccines. The flu is available as a nasal vaccine, so we have some experience with these in the past. But this is an interesting one because it's only a single dose. And most of the other vaccines that we've talked about so far on the podcast, and most of them that I've seen out there, have had to be multiple doses in order to get an adequate immune response to the virus. This will be a single inhalation of an adenovirus with a spike 2 protein in it. So far, this has been shown to work in mice, protecting them against SARS-CoV-2. So fingers crossed that the studies in humans will work out. And it looks like we've got tons of vaccine candidates out there, and obviously lots of companies are working on this. So I suspect that we're going to have quite a few different options out there in the near future in terms of vaccines for the population.
So, short update today. We just wanted to yell about the FDA a little bit and do the obligatory vaccine update. We'll come at you in just a couple days with a really cool podcast we recorded with Dr. Nathan Price on what's called Age Bio. It's a calculator looking at biologic age. We've been talking about DNA methylation tests recently and other ways to measure biologic age, and this is another cool option. So, in a couple days, look for that. It's an option that gives you things that you can actually modify and do too, which is one of the things we like about it. So that's in a couple days. Otherwise, thanks for listening. And Mike, actually, we've never mentioned on the podcast. We have we didn't mention it because it's sold out in a week, but we're having a brain summit at the Kentucky Castle with some really incredible folks that are coming and speaking. If you go to wildhealthsummit.com, you can see that. We did actually just get approval to add a few more spots. So if you want to come, it was sold out. We've added a few spots. There's also an online option as well if you can't travel. It's a really small course. I don't know if there's ever been a course with as many high-powered speakers to such a small number of attendees ratio. It's pretty incredible. So go to wildhealthsummit.com if you want to learn more about that. I'm not going to go over all the speakers or anything right now, but there are a few spots open for that now. And if you register, we can't wait to see you in about a month in person. Unless it all gets shut down by the pandemic again. But fingers crossed that a few of us will be able to get together. We are actually, everybody that comes will be doing actually testing. We've got a lab. The lab is a few miles away from where we're doing the event, so we'll be doing testing just for kind of extra safety with everything else that we do. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you found it helpful, give us a 5-star rating and write a review on iTunes. It really helps the podcast, and we greatly appreciate it. If you want to be a client or you want to work with us, go to wildhealth.com. Thanks again.